Okay, so welcome. Yeah. So tonight's shir is dedicated for the memory of Ilan Ganelis, who was murdered in Nebuch this week, and apparently listened to some of our classes. Hid secretly, like a lot of secrets that we don't know. Hashem Yom or whatever you're supposed to say. Now, this is somewhat out of our Seder Shir because of Purim. Not so exciting like the ones that you want. For that you need a different kind of Shir. But more serious. But what we have to do is like seriously explain how not to be so serious. That's the whole shtick. So maybe I was thinking how to like make it really bear perish on the soul, but I didn't get to figure that out. So you'll have to make the connection yourself. Eventually, you'll figure it out. I know how like I know the highway you need to drive in to get to that exit, but I didn't drive through it actually. So maybe we'll get to it at some point. But the framing I have is something like this. So there's a certain Lashon Hara, there's a certain picture that people have, that there's happy people, like the Breslevers, always discussed, right? And then there's like these serious, what do you call them?
Melancholic.
Melancholic is even too much, but like, well, nowadays it's like the bougie people, but even like the Yakish kind of people, right, basically. And those people are like the Rambam people. So you would expect, and I think this is also the reality, at least for the most part, that like if you go to the Breslev shul, you'll find a bunch of drunks on the floor on Purim afternoon. Actually per morning, because the Breslev minhag is to start right in the morning. You know? Good minhag. Should all try the minhag. And Breslev,
Is it a real minhag?
yeah, it's a real minhag. In Breslev, you daven v'siken. So it's very important. I think hold of this, but this is not. I gave last year or 2 years ago a whole series of shirim on how to get drunk on Purim, and this is one of my instructions. That you should do it right in the morning. In Breslev they daven v'siken, and then by 7 a.m. everyone is dead. So, like something like that. Then you come back in the afternoon, you could have mincha or whatever. Like by the time you're starting, they're done. Yeah. And so it's all pirashash. There's a whole kavanah in that, whatever. Gets it. The Rambam says a fetish that you should do in the afternoon, so it's a machlekes. Or almost a fetish, I think. If you connect a few Rambams, that's what you end up with. Yeah, so you would expect that those are the people that are happy, or ecstatic, maybe. Not even happy is probably not the correct word. And if you go in Rambam shul, Maimonides congregation, then you sort of see a bunch of like, some people are like, I don't know exactly, but Shachem Maises, basically.
Like drunk.
Yeah, not really. Like, I don't know, all the people that I know, they don't even pretend, like they drink grape juice on Purim, which is like apicursis. I think maybe a yaitz with grape juice because it's a din yayin, so blah blah blah. Yeah, sure. Anyways, so my agenda is at least to move the needle a little bit in the other direction. This is my avowed agenda bias, but I think it's true. So there's many ways. Oh, I also found, so I'm not the one that's just imagining because I know like the Rambam congregation guys. I actually found an academic article about this. So from Samyaka actually. So in this nice article from Yaakov Blitzstein, I don't know, it was a Jew. He seems to have been he was nifted a year or two ago recently, but he was a Rambam scholar and seems to have been a Talmud Chacham. And he wrote a nice article on Simcha according to the Rambam. Doesn't go close to as far as I think we need to, but tries. And he quotes someone discussing the Rambam in Hilchas Lulav, very famous, you probably know the Rambam, talks about Simcha and Simchas Beis Sheva. And he says that there were researchers who thought that this is bilti ofyani for the normal Rambam, like L'mishnah Toatz Lulash la Rambam. And this is someone, Heinemann, Maimonides in the Arabischen Einhaltslehre or whatever, some article in German, that says that this is weird. Like, this is Rambam out of character. according to the Enlightenment imagination of what the Rambam was, of course. Okay, so we could try to go in a lot of different directions to try to figure this out. I think in one of the Yiddish shirim 2 years ago, there was a whole thing to like make the halacha part of this, like prove that the Rambam actually, among the other Rishonim that discuss what to do with this weird joke that Rava made about Ad Le'yada, the Rambam was actually one of the ones that takes it literally. Unlike the Ashkenaz Rishonim, which try to push it away and generally don't take halachas that literally. The Rambam, actually, great illiteralist that he is, takes halacha literally almost all the time, and takes this halacha also literally. He doesn't take the Ad Le'yada literally, which is why he transfers it into something more like practical instruction of like basically get very drunk. But he did take it literally in the sense of get very drunk. Unlike others who said, well, it's not the halacha, and they found different reasons not to think that it's something you should do. So that's the halacha part. There's also the, I don't think I'm going to do that today. There's also, unless you want to, it's not in my notes, not really. There's also the sort of medicine part, or Muslim Islamic part, which also puts the Rambam on the side of, this is specifically about drinking. I'm going to talk about Simcha more broadly, but specifically about drinking. The Rambam obviously lived in Muslim world, and Muhammad famously didn't hold of drinking at all. So if you're a good Muslim, you don't drink any wine, maybe even any alcohol. It's all machlekes. If it's a din in the wine, or it's a din in the alcohol, it's a din in the... Seriously, this is one of the... very interesting. I read a book, Peter Adamson, who was a great researcher of Islamic thought and of general philosophy, but he's a specialist for Muslims. And he uses always the example of deciding if you're allowed to like take drugs or different meshakrim that are not wine, as the example of how halacha works, how different shittas, how jurisprudence and Islamic jurisprudence works, is basically can be seen from this thing. Like, do we go after the town? Do we go after the, very simple, but this is like a very old discussion. Anyway, so if you're a good Muslim, you don't drink wine.
I think the world got to realize this for real about the World Cup. Like people, the World Cup, like they basically had no alcohol in the whole country.
Yeah, they're very literal. The Hantige Muslims, the Sunni Muslims, that take it very seriously. This halakha.
The Jews kind of go.
At least pretend to take it seriously. It's not like you can in Iran. You basically can get wine, like you can get marijuana in New York City, but now maybe it's already officially mutter. I don't know, but until last week or whatever. But it's the Sunnis are very serious about this. So the only ones that are even like officially give you a shtickle heter are the Sufis sometimes.
Did the Jews exclusively interpret this like by Nazir, for example?
Yeah, the Jews are not. The Chachamim do not think that getting drunk is the problem. Although that's obviously is the problem, the way Halachas Nazir goes in the opposite direction. Yes, it's a very, very clear example of how Halacha doesn't think this way. In general, doesn't think that we should. It's a weird. Okay, I'm not getting into this discussion, but just to give the cultural background. So, if you're a good Muslim, and this of course comes with a good reason, like the racist way to say is if you're an Arab, you can't hold your wine. Obviously, you shouldn't drink anything. But if you're a Jew, maybe you could figure it out. Muslim, whatever. But that's racist. So, anyways, they don't hold of it, and the Rambam had a lot of affinity for the Islamic ways of doing ethics and doing halacha in a certain sense. You would expect him to accept this, and people think he does. I saw a whole article in some website, some Rambamist wrote, it doesn't say a name, like finding like the Rambam says you could make Kiddush and grape juice, and this shows us that he's getting drunk. That's like a very stupid thing to do, because it's just halacha. Like, it's just the opposite, because halacha doesn't care about this, so and so on. But in reality, the Rambam is at least medicinally, and like as a doctor, explicitly opposed to the Muslim ban on drinking. He writes it as politely as he possibly could, given the context that he's in, but he explicitly is against it. You could see in Hilchas Des already says that you should drink wine. Supposedly it makes your food go down better or whatever. But I mean, it basically says that you should drink and not go. One of the examples in Perek Gimel, I think it is, right, where he says you should not be an extremist, is do not be one of those people who don't drink any wine. You should drink wine and with measure, but you should. You shouldn't. Basically, he's saying don't be Muhammad. And this is generally one of his big criticisms of Islam, where he thinks that they're not chukam mishpatim tzadikim, and he explicitly sees them as going to the extreme in certain things. Where, in other words, he talks, for example, the Rambam talks about Arab or Muslim traditions of Achnasas Archim, Chasot. I don't know how it's called. He says they exaggerate with this, like they wouldn't they wouldn't like in too much chesed. They wouldn't give up a stranger even if it's a murderer just because it's a dinach nezazarchim or whatever. And there's other things. Where he thinks that they're extremists in general. And this is one of them. So he thinks they're extreme in their asceticism also, like they're too much against drinking wine. And that's like a philosophical criticism. But in his medical works, and at least two different medical works that he wrote, his medical works were written for Muslims, who he worked for, at least as a doctor. And he says something like this, like, it's a shame that your people are stuck. You can't drink wine because it's very healthy, both emotionally, like physically and spiritually. And one of them is like, okay, let's look for some alternatives. Like maybe you could drink very sweet honey, which will somehow get you high or whatever. So he explicitly says that this was a bad idea, the total ban on wine.
He also goes with that Nazar. He holds that Nazar as a chayta, right?
Yeah, that's Shmanik Dakim, of course. So you shouldn't be extreme in that. Right. That's his example, because he goes with this shit. Yeah.
Did Rabbeinu Avram agree, or did he also?
I don't know. You have to ask someone else. I don't know. I didn't look up that question. So then someone told me, and I wrote this on my Facebook, so someone reminded me that this is actually also a Muslim position. At least Ibn Sina's position is sort of, we don't know, I don't remember, he discusses this also, Adamson, I remember that it's true. But apparently in his autobiography he writes that when he would, like, his moichin would become tired, he would drink wine to get more inspired and think more. And so this is actually in the philosophical world and in the Muslim world, in some sense, the philosophers are the wine drinking people, because they're like, yeah, there's halacha, but like whatever. This is for medicinal purposes. I think that's the excuse. Like this is a medicine, so it's like you get a medical marijuana heter, like basically that trick. Which of course might be true. Like it depends how broad medicine is. Like if medicine means feeling good emotionally, then it might be a real medicine. Like in Prohibition, all the Jews got licenses to drink wine because there was doctors that would give out those things. So he's and so Avicenna drank wine, and I'm not sure if he like explicitly said la halacha that you're allowed to for that purpose, but he was definitely on the side of the Kanoim were against, like, use this against him always, like you're one of those apikoros who drink wine. So those are two general comments. So both in halacha and as a doctor, the Rambam is actually on the side of yes drinking, and it's not like he didn't know of people that are totally like do not. He knew of that and he denied that. He both thought that it's not a good ethics to be extremist, and it's not a good. He also paskin the halacha like the Gemara, as it says, more or less, literally. And it's not a good health. He actually says the way he said, and this is also in Al Chazda, is that if you're young you shouldn't drink wine. So he would agree with the American law that says you should only drink from 21 or whatever. But the older you get, the more you should drink. That's the Rambam's instructions. Like the 70-year-old guy should always be drunk. No, I don't mean drunk, but like drink more wine. Okay. He is against being drunk. He says shichris is very bad, but speaking within measure. What kind of
threshold would that be considered typically?
The old young thing?
No, even like in terms of drunkenness, like what is their level of impairment that they saw?
He doesn't, I don't know.
Well, he also would think that you should be a good drunk, probably. Like a good person would probably end up being a good drunk, like not like a crazy person. And
in Hilchos Dais it says, do not, I don't know if I quoted that here, in Hilchos Dais it says you should never drink without food. That's basically what it says. That's the actual, if you want to get there like halacha, I didn't quote that piece here. What? It's a good advice, true. Honestly, good advice. It says, when we talk about getting drunk, we don't mean like having a few cups of wine with your meal. Like there's a number, like in Hilchos Ovel, it says like 6 cups, like whatever. That's not, like 4 cups of wine in the Seder, that's not the problem. The problem is when after you're eating and then you're still drinking, then it becomes a baya. That's what Rambam says. And that's also true that in Hilchos Purim, and some people notice that, I'm not sure it's like a chiddush of the Rambam, but he explicitly puts this drinking thing in as, like he says, v'ketzad sudazi, and you should drink a lot. So he would not approve of you drinking without washing, even on Purim. So it's like, there's suda and this, and same thing in Yom Tov and Shabbos, he says explicitly you have to drink wine. But either on Shabbos, by the way, and there's a chiddush of the Rambam, that Shabbos you have to drink wine all 3 sudas. No other Rishonim hold like this, almost. So the Rambam is actually halachically more on the side of yes, drinking wine. Okay. So that's the halacha. Okay. So, but now let's get back, stop from. So, but drinking is only like a like certain like frame or a certain actionable thing where we could see like what kind of life you should have. Obviously, we don't. That's not what you do all day and all night. So there's a broader discussion here, and that's what I want to try to see. The broader discussion is about Simcha, translated as, we'll find out, joy, happiness.
Depends what you translate happiness.
Contentment? Yeah. What is that? So, what kind of happiness?
I imagine some sort of content type of happiness. Where that's what I'd be related towards.
Eudaimonia? Osher? Okay, so let's try to see. Let's try to see. So, what?
The surprise from ethics is that people were confused about what happiness means.
Yeah, it's a very unclear question what happiness is. But the Chiddush of ethics, and I think this is an interesting thing, where it's the Chiddush of the Rambam also. So I'm again putting the Rambam on the other side. So you would think that the Rambam Yeshiva, they talk about all kind of things, but they don't talk about Simcha much. And the Breslov Yeshiva, they talk about Simcha all the time. And actually, in people that if you read Rambam, and again if you compare it to like, I'm not sure where to compare it exactly to, maybe to other Rishonim, like the more classically rabbinic Rishonim, the Rambam is the one who talks about Simcha an awful lot out of proportion to what the sources, I think, say. You could always find a Ma'amar Chazal for everything, so it's very hard to tell what's like Chazal. But if you compare to other Rishonim, you could definitely, the Rambam talks about Simcha more than Tosfos and more than Ibn Yaina and more than whoever else is on the like classic list. And that is something that's very clear. If you read all, I just printed up 6 sides of Rambams on Simcha, and that's a bunch. I don't think you could find 6 sides of some pick your other person about Simcha. And he also puts it in the center of many different things in a very explicit way. So, for example, famously, so the Chassidish source, so just to give an example, which it's also in my notes, the very famous Chassidish source of Parshas Kisuvah, where it says Tachas Shlei Vatas Shem Lekecha B'Simcha V'Tiv Lev Merev Koil, and the Rizal has a whole thing with this. This is the Rambam's invention. I don't know if there's a source before the Rambam, but the Rambam definitely used this. This is one of his favorite psukim. He quotes it like 7 different times in his writings, in different ways each time. But he's the one that invented, I think, at least the one that brought the consciousness that this pasuk says that you should worship God with Simcha, which is not what it says, by the way. Not Simcha doesn't mean that. It's not the Pshat. It's not the Pshat. The Rambam knows that it's not the Pshat. He wasn't that dumb. But it's not the Pshat. It doesn't say anything about what... I mean, there might be psukim like in Tehillim, if this Hashem b'Simcha or something, but the pasuk in Kisuvah actually doesn't say that you should be over this Hashem b'Simcha, right? Because it literally says, when you had Simcha v'Tov Laivav, now you will have trouble and you won't worship Hashem. That's what it says. It doesn't say anything about worship Hashem with Simcha. Simcha being a part of Vayt Hashem is not anything that has to do with the pshat of that pasuk, and not me. Rashi doesn't say this. Like, this is the Rambam's invention. And the Chasludav. The Rambam invented this thing that it's like Avoid Hashem b'Simcha. That's not what it says.
So what is saying pshat?
Simcha means happiness in the sense of having good times. When you have Simcha. Like Kol Makayim Satoyr Ma'osh Sleif Levatla Ma'oni. That's the word of that pasuk. Simcha v'Tiv Leivav in general, in the whole Sefer Dvurim, Simcha never means being happy. It sort of doesn't, I mean, it means some part of happiness, which according to Aristotle at least, but it doesn't mean, and Sefer Dvurim is the book that talks about Simcha. I think the only book in the whole Torah that talks about Simcha. I would discuss this on Sukkot, I think. Did we? I planned to say this shir on Sukkot. I think I said a different shir in the end. That's in Parashat Sefer Dvurim. Hey. The Samach Chages says in the Dvurim, there's 5 times. No, the mitzvah of Mahadim says 5 times in the Torah, and only one of them it says that you should be happy, and that's in Sefer Dvurim. The only other time, I think the only other time that it says about Simchas and the other Svarim are like Lovan and Aharon that were happy in the whole Torah. Some Lovan said Vashlechacha b'Simcha v'Shirim, and Aharon says V'ra'acha b'Samach b'Liba. I think those are the only 2. Maybe there's more. When I did a search on Sukkot, so I don't remember. But those are 2 that stood out because it's like no shachas. In any case, there's mitzvahs and there's me'adim and it doesn't say Simcha. In any case, in the Lo'erich Kol Sefer Dvurim, it always says Simcha and it always means success. That's the best translation you could probably give it to in English. It's having success. And V'samach b'chol tov means you will like be successful and you will have the good things. It's not really saying, and then there's another step of like being emotionally happy or something like that.
Pshat's not an emotional.
No, it literally means
like
you will have a bunch of. No, I don't think it even means merrymaking. It means closer to what the Rambam says in the Chaspirim we'll get to. but it means something like you will enjoy all the things you have. Maybe that's, I can't give a precise translation. Because it's all, Simcha Sachag is always, I don't even know that it's only about Sukkot that it says, mostly. Which it always means you will be rich and have all these things and you will use them. That's Simcha, this is what the Simcha is. You will enjoy them, you could say. But it's not like what the Chachamim do with it and say, yeah, so you should buy clothes for your children. That's not what it says, and definitely not what the Rambam does with it, which is you should think. We'll get to that, but it's not the pshat. No, Samech B'Chalke is already a moralization of that, so that's a different thing. We'll get to. So if you see, that's why I have a list in the top where it has 9 different meanings of Simcha in different contexts. We'll see about that. So in any case, what I'm saying is, just to get back to my general thing, is the Rambam is the one that puts Simcha on the Jewish map in a major way. It's not the Zohar, it's not the Baal Shem Tov or the Aryel, it's the Rambam. They all took it from him and they took it in their way, but it's the Rambam that puts Simcha on the map in a very major way. I think, and I definitely seen, this is very weird to me, I've seen, like, again, I didn't find almost any research about Simcha and the Rambam. I found this article, it's a good article. And even he doesn't really say this. But it seems obvious to me that this is a Greek influence. In other words, everyone knows that, like you told about the ethics. Greek ethics, or classical philosophical ethics, not saying it's against the Torah or pro, but it's this framing is classically about how to be happy. Plato and Aristotle and everyone else in their tradition. Basically, every single philosopher until Kant thinks that being a good person is the same thing as being a happy person. And of course, the word happiness, like everyone says, is a sort of a mistranslation, or at least it's not good enough. Sometimes you can say blessedness, or the word is eudaimonia, which literally means good-spirited. Right? Like having good spirit, like good spirit from the gods. That's like the literal etymology of the word. And people translate it as flourishing or all kinds of words, but the word is happiness. I think that happiness should mean all those things. I saw some, whatever. The point is, it's basically, it's happiness, okay? It's whatever Rama means with Simcha. And people claim that this is somewhat egoistic because it's making human happiness the center of everything. It's not really about worshipping God. It's not about doing something for someone else. This is like right? It's somewhat an ancient criticism. Like it's a Christian criticism of this ethics. Right? This is clear. Did I do a class about Augustine? And I did. You were here. The Greek ethics is about being a perfect or complete, all these words, active person, the best person you can be, having a good life. That's what it's about. And all of philosophy, and very clearly, if you read certain dialogues of Plato, if you read Aristotle, all of it is doing the Ezi Chochma Smech B'Chelke trick. Ezi Asher Smech B'Chelke. In other words, they're all saying, you want to have a good life. Now I'll teach you what a good life really is. It's really the life of the mind, it's really ethical life, it's really virtuous life, and so on. Right? They're not saying that it's a different kind of thing, right? Unlike Kant, or what we get in Jewish tradition, sometimes we like Mimis Gabar Alayet. So this is why I discussed this, right? This is why the Shemona Plukim about if it's better to be a tzaddik or better to be to break your Yetzirah is such a fundamental question, right? Did I do that class here? I think I did, but if not, then
we touched on the topic for sure. But I don't know if we.
The point I'm not getting at this. In general, right? There's this criticism that in the Greek world, you should be perfect. It's all about having the best life a human can have.
Yitzchok goes back to this a little bit, right?
Yeah, but not exactly. Yes, in some way. But that's. Yeah, but this is not Nietzsche. It's weird. When we read, and this is true for every classical ethics, even I think more classic Indian ethics is also like this. I don't know, classic Chinese ethics is also like this. Basically everyone besides for Kant, and this has roots in Christianity, but everyone besides for Kant is the most clearest, like against this thing. But they all assume that ethics, in other words, this whole broad thing we call ethics is how to live a life. And how to live a life means how to live a life that's good and good for you. It's not good for the gods, right? Even the people that say good for the gods is just because they assume that the gods will know what's good for you, like the Euthyphro. That's another big confusion, right? The Plato's thing. Okay, and the point is that this is the thing, and if you read any classic Jewish work, you'll find like we're looking for how to be Adam Hashalem, a perfect human, or perfect. This is a bad word. It means a complete or fully actualized person. That's what it's all about. And that's why, that's what I'm saying, it's connected here. That's why, for the Rambam, now, in other words, to be a happy person. Now, of course, happiness, this is what I'm saying. When you read the ethics, what he's all about is saying that happiness doesn't mean how you're not going to be happy. It's somewhat of a trick, but it doesn't go as far as Kant would go, right? He's saying you will be the most happy if you just think all day. If you eat all day, you will not be happy. That's not what happiness is. This is not like you have to believe this. He's trying to show it to you, right? Not saying, it's like, you want to be happy. Buying more cars is not going to actually make you happy. In other words, the thing that you are looking for when you buy a car, right? It's not I'm imposing some new thing from outside on you. The thing you are looking for when you buy a car, which is to be happy, you're just confused. You have the same end. It's not changing the end. It's not changing the kind of thing that we're doing. It's doing the same kind of thing as everyone, just showing you how to do it correctly. Like Plato famously in the Alcibiades, and people criticize him for this, and they took this guy, this young guy, who was like, "What's your goal in life?" "My goal is to be the most powerful guy." Okay? Basically, I'm going to be a politician. And he turned out to be a great dictator and evil guy. So that's why. That's the point of the whole story. It says, look, let me tell you how to actually be powerful. You want to really be powerful, you got to be a philosopher. And that's what real power is. And he's not like being a Musernik, like real power is standing person. He's serious about it. And he has arguments for it, which means he's trying to convince him. Maybe so. There's a machlokes. The Platonists say it just didn't work. The guy didn't understand. The other guy say, yeah, that's what he taught him. But that's already a machlokes. But this is the general gist of the thing. And this is very different than like verquetschte frum ethics, which comes from Kant. It was a verquetschte Jecke. That's where the whole thing starts. They never got married. And they had children and a wife and all these things. And whose father was like this Protestant minister. But it wasn't a good place to be. Whereas like, no, we're not supposed to look for what's good for you. We're supposed to be altruistic, look for what's good for God or for someone else. And what's the point of that other guy having something good? And what's the point of God having something good? Nobody knows. But that's like like some obligation, which just comes from nowhere. All kind of things like that. But it goes back to the basic like religious impulse, which is like we should sacrifice for God. God is greater than us. And of course, there's ways to put that in the perfection way. We don't have to become Kantian because of that. But that's the big thing. And this is the great thing. And now this after connected to Simcha. This is basically the word, and literally the word they use is, again, blessedness or happiness. And the happiness is literally Simcha. And now the Rambam, I think, very clearly made this identification. And I don't know why nobody says this clearly. Maybe someone does, and I didn't find them doing it. But I'm pretty sure that the Rambam very clearly uses Simcha in this sense. And this is why he finds Simcha to be both the goal and the way to the goal. We'll have to get to that. But at least, and this is, I have to try to define that, but at least this is the goal. So an example, if you want to jump all the way to the goal, you have to look in Hilchos Tshuva. And also at length in the Akdama to Perek Chelek. But in Hilchos Tshuva, in where is it? I got this in Hilchos Tshuva Perek Ches, right? On the second to last page in this book. Hilchos Tshuva Perek Ches, the Rambam famously uses a pasuk where it says "V'simchas olam al rosham," and he uses this pasuk. I think this is the pasuk that the Medrash used. But he's interpreting the famous Medrash or the famous Mamre of Rav, it was, right? Which says "Olam haba imba lo yachilev lo yishtia ela tzadikim yoshvim v'atrasem b'Hashem v'nehenem mesiv hashchina," and I think it's Shenema "V'simchas olam al rosham." And what the Rambam is doing is using this Mamre Chazal to show that the goal or the end of human life is an intellectual perfection, or having perfect knowledge, true knowledge, and that is really what the Simcha is. In other words, don't think, this is like his whole anti-Gashmias thing, don't think that Elam Haba is the kind of enjoyment that you think is enjoyment, or the kind of happiness, because enjoyment is just a kind of happiness in this. By the way, I should have said the word enjoyment or pleasure. Pleasure is just a kind of happiness. And to the extent that pleasure is not that, then it's totally not interesting, right? Like the extent that pleasure is just not pain or whatever, like some other ancient ethicist said, then we're not talking about that. We're talking about pleasure as the thing that people look for, right? You should have a life of pleasure, the kind of goal that pleasure is. Not pleasure in the sense, my body is working, I don't have pain. That's not interesting. That's something that animals have also, right? Okay, get to that. That's a different, that's the animal. But the point is, the Rambam's big thing is like tell you what pleasure really is. In other words, what true pleasure is, or the same thing with true happiness is. He uses the terms interchangeably almost, and maybe there's some difference, but not for this purpose. And what he's trying to tell you is that knowledge is the only true pleasure, or the most true pleasure, or the most eternal pleasure, or the most eternal happiness. And he literally uses this Ma'amar Chazal, which uses this pasuk where he talks about the tzaddikim not having food. So in other words, and this is two things, right? One is that the kind of thing you get in Gan Eden, in other words, the kind of goal that there is for Avodas Hashem, right? That's because that's how he reads Gan Tzchar as, is not receiving some kind of
External.
some kind of gashmias pleasure, some kind of external completeness, which is a kind of shlemus, but that's not the goal. The goal is to have this intellectual knowledge, intellectual thing, and that is what comes along with pleasure. But the interesting thing is that there's two things going on. In other words, one is this denial of earthly or bodily pleasures as the point, and saying, well, it's intellectual pleasures that are the point. And the other one is that when you say this, it sort of comes together. The pleasure is becomes the same thing as the thing that you're doing, right? Like the Rambam uses this here, where he says trying to prove his point that it's not a bodily thing. He says, well, how could Simcha be on someone's head? What does it mean, Simcha Sa'el Ma'arosh? Obviously, this is figurative language, and the Tanakh calls that Torah das. It's interesting, right? If you read V'zer Sh'amri Atarseim B'Reshem, what is that Torah? What is the crown that you have on your head? It's the knowledge. Well, obviously, knowledge is in your head, so it sort of makes sense. But it's not like that there is knowledge and that knowledge has pleasure. And he sort of thinks that this is a difference between bodily pleasure and other pleasures. In other words, goes back to the other machlokes that Rambam has with the literalist account of schar va'enesh, right? Like the general account says, you will do these things, right? And then God will reward you, right? For doing them. This is a two-step process. Then we could discuss, are those things that you get bodily things or not spiritual things? Well, that's not really what the Rambam does. And he does that, that's the step one. But what he really does is trying to tell you how there's no two-step process. The thing that you get is the thing that you do. And this is another way of saying that the pleasure of knowledge is the knowledge itself. You don't need to get paid for it, because another way of saying, because that's the goal, right? If the goal of eating is to enjoy the eating, then you got two things, and then we get a disconnect if it doesn't work and things. But if the goal is just knowing God, which is what it means to be a full human being, if that's the goal, then the thing that you're doing and the goal is almost the same thing, or maybe literally the same thing.
If you obtain knowledge, and that's the word of obtaining knowledge.
Yeah, and that's why.
Use that memory, right?
What?
The one about tzaddikim and Hashem b'chayim, it's the same thing, right?
There.
Tzaddikim, I feel
Yeah.
they're missing.
Yeah. There's no difference. Another word we're saying with this, there's a slight difference. There's no difference between the pleasure you have in contemplating truth when you're alive and the one that you're dead. The only difference is that you can contemplate it better when you're dead, which it says in Chedel Gimel Perek Nun Aleph, and other places, because when you're alive, but just when you're alive, it's hard to think, because you have to go to the bathroom at some point. And when you're dead, you never have to go to the bathroom. So you could just continually think. Or you never have to eat. And he literally says this about Moshe in Perek Nun Aleph. Moshe didn't eat for 40 days because he was enjoying the knowledge so much that he didn't have to eat. That's literally what the Rambam says in the end of Ma'aner. In other words, it seems to be like a thing that's possible. That's what's supposed to happen to everyone when they die, basically. Just an example of what's supposed to happen.
Why is the eating not like that? Like, why can you eat lishma also?
But eating lishma still has 2 steps. It still is a two-step process.
What's the 2 steps?
Wait, you could either know in order to know, or you
have to get to this.
Well,
I want to eat in order to eat.
Yeah. No, if you eat you can't eat in order to eat. That's wrong. That's we have the ethics to convince you of that. If you do that, then you're just wrong. It doesn't work. It's not true. Because humans don't eat in order to eat. If you'll be an animal, it might be true. But since you're human and you have potential for knowledge, then you can't eat in order to eat. If you do that, then you're crazy. Which means you're wrong about what you are. Which means, like we discussed last week, that you're not really going to enjoy it. In a similar way to why humans can't be can't be golems, right? We discussed this. In a similar way, you can't actually enjoy just eating l'shem eating. You could pretend to. I think this would be Rambam's criticism of all this be here now morality, which is trying very hard to make whatever you're doing right now the goal, which is not possible to do. Unless it's thinking, in which case it is. But not because it's what you're doing right now, because that's the correct goal. Okay, so that's, how did we get to this? Oh, so that's just saying that the goal of everything is Olam Haba, and the Rambam is the one that both takes Olam Haba out of like of being a physical thing and reconnects it to Avodah, so he has this Chametz mitzvah thing going on. And he's the one that invented it, more or less. And that means, this is really, if you think about it, this is how, if you think, now I'm saying almost a drish, but it's true. This is how in the Rambam's mind, the Simcha that the Torah promises you as schar of the mitzvah, whether it's Simchas Olam al Rosham, which the Gemara interprets as Simcha Olam Haba, or whether it's a Simcha Olam Hazeh, which is what Sefer Dvarim is talking about, and the Rambam knows that. But if you're thinking of what the true meaning of it has to be, it's the same thing as what you're doing. It's the same thing as the Avodah and the schar become the same thing. So the reason the Rambam could do this like Chassidish Pshat and say, if there's Hashem b'simcha, I don't know if that might mean like the Rambam, I don't know. But this Tachas Hashlevat Hashem lekech b'simcha, say with simcha, not when you are b'simcha, is because he generally thinks that that's true of Avodah Hashem. At least of the true Avodah Hashem, which is not this two-step one, but the one, the Avodah Yuchedis, right? The one that you do when you know things, which is the same thing as getting schar.
And Maisa mitzvah would not work like that. I mean, that's just a means.
Yeah. We're gonna get to the Ma'ash. I'm gonna go back to actually giving Mishlech Manas. But that's what we true for the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, which is the mitzvah of knowing, or the mitzvah of Havas Hashem, which is the mitzvah of knowing. There's so many mitzvahs that going to the same thing as knowing. At least Talmud Torah and Havas Hashem, and Yidiyas and Metzias, all the mitzvahs that he counts as mitzvahs of Aminah, right? Yichud Hashem and Metzias Hashem and Lois Yelcha and all of that.
Maybe Tefillah.
Possibly, but I think he thinks of tefillah as a two-step thing, because tefillah, at least for most people, is not that. Maybe if you daven that way, yeah. So, and this is weird. So now this is like two points, very important points of how Simcha became the center of Yiddishkeit. One, by understanding Simcha as the same thing as Eudaimonia, which is the goal of a human, which is being perfect, being blessed, which is Olam Haba according to the Rambam, and by taking that and making the Avodah and the schar the same thing, which
what was the model pre-Greek influence?
The model pre-Greek influence was, like the Rambam quotes, again using the Rambam's framing in Shemona Pekah Berekei, or wherever it is, Daled or Hay, if I remember correctly, that it's actually from suffering that God loves, right? This is very important. This is the Christian model, or some Christian models, and so also some Hasidic Ashkenaz models.
Actually, the ancient Jewish model?
I don't know. I don't make such statements because I don't think that you can know that. But the Rambam's view, I don't say pre-Greek. There's a different model which says that actually it's from Tzara Agra, right? This is the big difference. So for example, according to, it's not really true. People say the Hasidic Ashkenaz say this, but they also say the other side. So it's hard to say that they really only say that. But some people would say that the more you suffer for a mitzvah, the more harder it is, then the more schar you get, right? Which is the opposite, like the illogical.
You could fit that into the Rambam.
You could fit that in a secondary way, of course. Like, for example, you could say that working hard. I think you could say something like working hard. If you work hard on something, that will cause a stronger, like you will gain those virtues in a better way. Like something that you bought for expense, that was you paid a big price for, become from tzarag can be true in the attaining virtues way. Like it becomes more part of you when it was hard for you, things like that. But that not in the sense of God giving you more things because He likes people that suffer for Him. And the Rambam is very explicitly against this idea. Even like picks this thing up by the horns and says like God doesn't hate the world and doesn't want to, like, and he thinks that people that are, right, there's this whole Shemona Pekah where it says that people that are just breaking their body because that's what Hasidim do are just not understanding what those Hasidim are doing, right? And he does say maybe those Hasidim are doing it derech refuah, maybe it's because they're trying to gain those virtues and so on, but it's not because the breaking is doing anything. In other words, ideally you should be a tzaddik gomer, not a kohev yitzray, right? And the literal language, and I brought it here, the literal language he uses for tzaddik gomer versus the kohev yitzray, and this is Aristotle's language, is the person who is happy when he's doing good, or enjoys. These are these two words, very the same words in this context. If you enjoy the mitzvah, means that's what you want. So that's the kind of person you are. Well, how do we know what kind of person you are? Basically, things that you enjoy.
The second soul is little, whatever.
Well, if you have a conflict still, then you're still not a perfect. Then it's fine. We know that most people have conflicts. That's why there's this. That's why we need virtue, basically, because people have conflicts. But that you're not being a perfect person. You're learning to be a perfect person, right? But the real person is a person that's happy doing mitzvahs, happy doing the good thing, right? Like Aristotle says literally, this is Aristotle's language. Nobody calls a generous person a person who doesn't enjoy giving other people stuff. He thinks that this is normal language. I don't know if it's true, but it wasn't true in Athens, I guess. But it makes some kind of sense. Like, are you a generous person if you're like, I'm gonna be giving, like, I don't know. It doesn't sound like it wouldn't be geschmack to get tzedakah from that guy, right? Like we could literally, I think the Rambam connects this to the thing where the Gemara says that good lamal ben shnam, you have to give tzedakah b'simcha, right? And generally, the Rambam understands this to be the meaning. This is one meaning. This is not the meaning, the final meaning that we discussed. So now we're up to another meaning, right? So I'm getting to a second thing. The first thing I said is in my numbers, just to have clarity. In my numbers, so when you write notes, you'll see it. In my numbers, what I said first is over here, number Zayin, right? I started from number Zayin. I said that the Rambam sees the goal as Simcha, and therefore that becomes both the Avodah and the goal. Now what I'm saying is that this leads to number Gimel, okay? Number 3. Yeah, this order here is not the order of the class. We know Aristotle said that. You don't have to do the same order. And we also learned the parasha, I was thinking, because the Tzal had a different order than Moshe, right? It's not always the same order. But the second, something that comes out of this, and this is a real pshat of Simcha Shal Mitzvah that Rambam understands. It's in Magid Mishnah Beferish and Hilchos Sukkah. I didn't bring it here, but Magid Mishnah says this. That doing mitzvahs b'simcha means, and this is a different meaning of simcha, a slightly different meaning. Like it means something more like agreeing with it, right? And agreeing with it in your soul, right? Agreeing with it emotionally. Like when you do a mitzvah and you don't agree with it, like the guy that gives it tzedakah and like is having a hard time doing it. Actually, there's no such people. Nobody really does that, right? The people that are doing things, generally you only do things when you like them. There's like a few tzaddikim that like work on themselves. Very few such people, right? Generally, there's another reason why we should promote this way more than that. But like, which chinuch should be not toward the Simcha Agrib because it causes less people to do it. That's just a tactical thing, generally. That's what older mechachim say, right? You're supposed to make Yiddishkeit geschmack, and anyways, if they would know what they were saying. But yeah, it's not really. I mean, Aristotle also thinks that that's the whole reason why we do all this chinuch, all this education is so you should enjoy it. Like the reason we do mechanech tanim b'mitzvahs is so they should enjoy it and then one of the things people enjoy is the things that they're always doing. Secret about humanity, nobody knows. Like people think they enjoy novelty somewhat, but only when it's like based on something. 90% no, like novelty is only the last 10%. People enjoy doing things that they did yesterday as part of like agreeing. That's how humans work. And that's why we try to teach kids, like literally in an external way, right? In a not the true way, right? Tanya says, just because he should like have this like habit of putting on tefillin in the morning, and then he will be able to do it b'simcha. And the term of simcha would be here agreeing with it, like not in conflict with it, which is why the modern Orthodox idea of akaida is a very bad idea. Like it's literally the other side of that Rambam, right? And the whole idea of mitzvahs being kavula Aryel, and this whole Kierkegaard, right? Slavovitch also. This whole idea is anti-Rambam, extremely anti-Rambam. It's good for chinuch in some cases where it's needed. Maybe that's whatever, but it also makes people not being able to do mitzvahs b'simcha. And this is the real reason. Just so if you know, this is the real reason why the man people that don't do mitzvahs b'simcha. It's because they're not used to them enough. In other words, this is part of the theology. It's very weird. It's like became a whole part of the. Because some people in Berlin felt very uncomfortable putting on tefillin because the goyim looked at it like weird. Although it's not really more like, right? It's not really more weird than like playing organ in church. Like this whole Mendelssohn thing, where like we're going to be normal people and do whatever the normal guy do. Like who made them normal? Who says? Maybe we're the normal guys, right? I mean, honestly, is kugel not better than whatever they eat over there? No, it's not. It depends what you're used to. But I'm saying it's like some mistake here where you like take too seriously the how do you call it, like the style or the spirit of the times, so called, and then in order to solve this problem, a bunch of, and not only modern Orthodox, by the way, all modern Orthodox Jews are modern Orthodox to some extent, because it just happens when you, besides for like, I don't know, besides for me, I'm trying to get away from that. Everyone decided, okay, the solution to this will be that maybe it's a bigger matter to do mitzvahs when you don't identify with them, right? Because maybe like from Tzara Agra, maybe Kant was right. And Kant literally said the precise opposite of Aristotle. He says that you're not an ethical person as long as you're doing something you enjoy. This literally is like slogan almost. Like it has to become out of like overcoming, right?
It just seems like they have two different whole meanings of the word ethical.
Yeah.
It seems like they're talking past each other. It's not really machlokes, really.
You could say that, but they replace each other. And it's two totally different meanings, but they're also replacing each other, right? They make people think only of one.
Does Kant agree with Aristotle that this is actually what's happiest for you? I mean,
I actually think so. Yes. Firstly, Kant denies the whole search for happiness as a good goal, because he thinks that ethics is about not searching for happiness. So there's like, it talks past each other because it's using entirely, the system is different all the way to the base, almost, at least I think all the way.
It starts from a whole.
It starts from entirely different premises.
Yeah.
And Kant sort of starts from God telling you what to do. And he says, well, you find it in your soul, whatever. But he has a God, he starts all the way from the other side of that.
Vishagrad is also like the extreme version of this. Vishagrad, Michael Vishagrad.
Yeah, I don't know what is that. I'm sure there. Yeah, what I'm saying is that this is what causes the modern people to think that to not be besimcha. As far as I can tell, it's a theory that I just made up. No, but it's true because it becomes a part of the theology to be alienated, like Marx's term. You become alienated from what you're doing, and that this becomes like a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to be alienated because if you just do it because it's part of you, and even some Muslims and some Chassidim say this, like it becomes mitzvah nashim le'mada. You're just doing it because you're used to doing
I think
it.
it's still in the Protestant work ethic also.
Yeah, all of that. So all these things. I mean, I don't like this whole like conspiracy theory thinking, but I'm just saying that. So I try to make more local points, maybe. But although it's fun, the conspiracy theory is more fun. And no, it's all Martin Luther's fault, that anti-Semite. And
Kant became the official villain of this year, I think.
No, it was Aristotle and Kant are the big machlokes.
Yeah.
Serious machlokes.
Yeah.
And in ethics for sure. And the fact that all modern Jewish, I mean all modern Orthodox Jewish thought is just basically German thought, which is post-Kant people. Literally all of it. And even the Litvaks are basically like that, and the Chassidim, like, then when this is just history, when the Litvaks heard of Kant, they were like, wow, amazing, this proves that we're right. And there's a book called Sefer HaBris, which was written by Aryel Litvak, and it says this explicitly. And the Chayyadam and his,
right?
the Chayyadam, Sefer HaBris?
Oh, no,
Sefer HaBris was Reb Pinchas of Vilna. Early, like, even before, he was a Litvak before there were Litvaks. He doesn't use Kant for the ethics. He uses Kant because he's still a Makibel, but he uses Kant for his denial of philosophy as a way to achieve truth. And the Chayyadam famously in the beginning of his work quoted Kant and then took it out, but he quoted Kant as saying that that's why we can't do the Rambam's Chakira, we have to have him in a Pshita, whatever. But this was from the Sefer HaBris, or I think he read it there. And the Chazon Ish, all these people, they liked it because it seemed to match with their other side, the Tzara Agra worldview, basically.
Kantian metaphysic, like, start before the ethics or after? Or
no, they're the same. It's all connected in the same thing. Yeah, the three criticisms. I don't know much about. I'm just saying. But Kitzur Amasa is that this is why we're not happy, because we do things that we don't agree with, and we think that that's a mitzvah to do things that you don't agree with, and that also means that the mitzvahs never become part of you, or never become a way of making you a better person, because they're just for a whole different goal, which is whatever. Either just this goal of like being a person who has law above him, right, heteronomy, or it's just whatever for the sake of itself or whatever, but no simcha. And also, oh, what I was saying.
Doing mitzvahs, no? He says that most people do mitzvahs. He says nachela. The Hamoyin that does mitzvahs, maybe one day they'll actually do for a good reason. That's basically.
Yeah, but see, but the thing is with the Hamoyin that they're more happy than the Litvaks because they don't have a theory that really says this. In other words, that's what I was in the middle of saying. We have mitzvah, this whole criticism of mitzvah nashim lemada becomes way overblown in modernity. Because the only way to be a good person is to be used to it. This is what Aristotle's ethics are all about, being used to being a good person. Because there's nothing beyond that. I mean, this is connects with so many things, but like, what is there beyond? Like, it sounds like when you read the ethics and when you read the Rambam, people read into the Rambam a lot of things. But when you read what it actually says, it just says, do it a lot of times until you're used to doing it. And that's what it means to have good midas. And we all think, we're conditioned to think, and it's official, like explicit, and people that don't think this way, and maybe there's reasons that, wait, that's not really I'm still not really a good person. I need to really be a good person. Now, what the hell is that really? Nobody knows. That's why we're all searching for something that we don't know what it is. Because what does it mean, really a good person? Well, and of course, in this world, in Aristotle, there is a really good person. A really good person is a person who enjoys it. That's basically his definition. If you enjoy being good, then you're a good person. If you're forcing yourself, that's just what it means. But for some reason, that's not enough for people. I don't know if that's really not enough. They're like, well, I enjoy it, but maybe really I don't want it. There's like this distinction between enjoying and wanting. I don't know where it goes back to. Like people think like, what would be, like the Tanya's thing, what would it be to me good to be a tzaddik for the Tanya? To not even like want to be something bad. The Tanya's tzaddik versus Bani very much matches to the Rambam's chassid and Yitzchok. But for some reason, I think as chassid is trying to go beyond the Rambam's chassid.
This is this Christian idea of removing the want, right? In some sense.
I don't know. It has to do with all these things, but I didn't figure that out right now. I don't know. I think that the Tanya Tzaddikim is trying to go beyond that. Sometimes he just says, well, you never, like, for some reason, sometimes we would say something like, well, if you're a regular person, like a Yitzchok or a Benini, then you like think, maybe I should go eat that cheeseburger, and then you say, oh, no, I'm a good person, I won't eat it. So, okay, this part of this confusion has to do with not believing in the difference between, like the Rambam says, if you want to do this, you can only do it for mitzvah sichlias. Can't do it for cheeseburger and whatever. This connects with a lot of other things. Point is, back to where we're at. If you want to be happy, you got to be used to doing mitzvahs. The only way to do it. You have to do mitzvah nishma lemada. And a big part of this like Kotzka thing that we're not going to do mitzvah nishma lemada causes people to be miserable because they do things that they don't agree with and that their body doesn't like, and your body's got to like it also. This is also why.
Anti-Kotzk?
Yeah, I'm anti-Kotzk.
I'm saying that idea.
Kotzk is just the Kantian. Or whatever. It's like Kierkegaard is trying to go beyond that by some weird way. But you got to be happy, which means you got to be used to it. Now, besides for being used, Rambam would tell you, of course, just doing it because you're used to it is not enough. You got to know what you're doing. Okay. But you also knowledge is not a kind of, but it's not against, you don't have to be against, you have to be against this. I don't have a clear formulation right now of getting into this, but you don't have to be against what you're used to. You got to do what you're used to plus. But like the famous, Kotzke thing where like, let's not daven for 3 days in order to daven out of not mother, just stupid. It's not even a good havamin.
It seems like a lot of these people don't have like a shleimus achra, and that's where they have a problem with this. They don't have anything past it. It's like, hey, what are we doing? Let's get some novelty out of it. The Rambam was like, fine, so you're used to not eating cheeseburgers. What's the point? The point is to get shleimus achra.
Yeah, and also part of the point of not eating cheeseburgers is to be used to not eating them. Maybe that is what it is.
There's past that also, so it's not.
Yeah, I understand that there's both, but they also think that, so that's why I got stuck here.
About changing your habits just to perhaps you'll relate to it in a different way. You're not going to relate to it as a habitual thing. Relate to it as the thing itself again.
Yeah.
I guess maybe the entertainment of the idea also in a more a concentrated way.
I don't know. I think that novelty is overrated.
Isn't that why we have the Mo'adim? Meaning, if we had the Mo'adim all the time, they wouldn't be as impactful. So we have them only once a year.
But that's, for example, not what the Rambam ever says. This is a classic Chassidish word. Like it literally says, and they literally use this to explain basic things. Baal Shem Tov thought about this a lot. This problem. The Rambam doesn't think of this problem. Just to be very clear, the Rambam doesn't think of this problem. He doesn't think in this way. I think that he.
This concept of having Yom Kippur, let's say once a year, because when else are you going to do it?
It's always chiyuv tshuva, but it's not effective.
Yeah, okay. For human weakness reasons like we're saying, most people don't get impressed if it's more than once. Yeah, but desensitization is so let's say how the Rambam would say desensitization is a problem of the imagination, not a problem of the intellect. I think that's his formulation would be. This is the problems of the imagination. And if you're living in the imagination world, then yes. But it's not a real problem. Exactly, we really don't care about that. Or at least don't place that as center. Like, the Baal Shem Tov literally has a problem with Gan Eden. Because he's like, I'm going to get bored. And many people think this is a problem. And the Rambam will tell you you're totally messed up because you're making an analogy from things that can be forever, and that's why they're bad, to things that are forever because they don't have this problem, right? And this Rambam, this has to one of my other numbers here.
But one demands novelty and the other doesn't.
Yes, the reason why Tanek Midene Tanek, right? That's the Al slogan. The reason why perpetual amusement doesn't work is because it's amusement and not pleasure. This is Aristotle's language. If you're looking for amusement, then you need to get in nuance. And Rambam says, well, if you're looking for amusement, you're looking for enjoying human pleasures, then you need a different woman every night because otherwise it gets boring. But if you're looking for intellect doesn't have this whole problem. It's just the opposite. It's always the same thing, and that's why it's so good. People also take this in a very weird way, but, whatever. But the Rambam's intellect, if you want to twist it in poetic way, you would say that the intellect is always fresh just by being what it is and doesn't need to be refreshed by being new. But that's just poetry. He really thinks that the class of things that change is not chalanet. It's not part of the things that come and go away. Truth doesn't come and go away. It just always is what it is. And that's why, of course, me'adim are both mostly for the intellect. Mostly for the imagination. And the imagination is, needs change and over variability, and we can't do always the same thing, and so on. And if there would be a perfect world, we would be in the world of Oisa Mitzvah Achas. Right? We would only need one mitzvah, like Adam Elisha. The fact that we need a lot of mitzvahs is because we keep on bumping around in the night between the things that keep on changing. And the lesson you should learn from all these things, like to the Rambam, the lesson you should learn from Shabbos not being all week is that Shabbos is not the point. The point must be truth. Shabbos is a time to think about the truth or whatever. But the point is not this kind of pleasure that you get out of a novelty. That's just totally the wrong thing. That's amusement. He literally calls this amusement in Aristotle's language. So this is both. So, what happens here, it's both. I'm flying around too much. This is both like you're saying, there's something beyond. Just this is a Kantian thing. Kant doesn't believe in anything beyond. So therefore, he says the only way I'm going to prove to myself that I'm altruistic is by that I'm doing something different than everyone else, right? I'm the good person, I'm the ethical person, is by going against. I'm doing something I'm not used to, right? And that becomes the definition of a good thing. Definition of a good thing is something I'm not used to. There's nothing else, right? And of course, if you think a good thing is just the good thing in itself, you don't have this whole problem of we don't have access to the good in itself or whatever, then you don't need this problem. You don't need that to be, maybe it's a good thing sometimes, like we said, you need to train yourself to break out of habits. All of that is true, but that doesn't define the good. The good is defined by just being good. That's one thing.
It's very local, as is Aristotle's minute, to keep everything very local. It's Aristotle's minute to keep everything very local.
Okay, and so
that's why good is just being good. That's what.
It could be the opposite also. Good is being good, but it's not being bad. Not being bad is a thing that you have to get through, but it's not. The point of being good is not to break your Yetzer Hara. Adam lenivra l'shavras teva. The Adam lenivra l'liyos Adam. Right? If you have broken teva, you gotta fix it. But the point is not to break the teva, to break your first nature or whatever you mean teva, right? But also because of that, he's much more comfortable with these habits. Of course, the habits are not the goal. Virtue in general is not the goal. I mean, unless you talk about intellectual virtue, which is not really a virtue. I mean, it's the practice of it is a virtue, but the knowing is not a virtue. It's like the schar already. Right? It's being like a god. This is also Aristotle's language. But there's nothing wrong. You see, so because of this, it's very good to use habit. Habit is what virtue is, and by the same token, regular happiness, in the sense of the real wine, not the yain shel Torah, is also useful. It's not the goal. But like we said, it's as useful as anything else.
In what sense? In the sense of acting in accordance with what?
No. Why? Okay, I have to get to that. That's now I'm going all the way backwards.
Is the second sheet of pleasure, real quick? Is that doing something that's painful for you, or is it just submitting to the will of the God?
Those are two different things, I think. Two different problems, I think. I didn't try to talk about the theological problem of God's will.
No, but I'm saying, is
connected.
the Christian view of pleasure, or whatever, the contemporary Jewish view of pleasure, I don't care what you call it, is it doing something that that's painful? I think it's more just saying, no, I'm doing the will of the Creator.
No, it's doing things that are painful. Yeah. I think doing the will of the Creator is not the same thing as this. Mm-hmm. These things work together, but they're two different machlekas. Yeah. A Kantian view is that you have to do things that are hurt.
Like you said,
That's why Nazis came out of that. No, whatever. The Kantian view is that the hurting is, and the Tanya says this sometimes. This is not only Kant. That the Hisgabris is the point, is what makes it good.
Trying for the best.
This is true in practice because most people aren't born with good habits, but it's not true as a definition. The thing with God's will is different because what if God wants me to be happy? You see, the God's will could work the other way around also, which is the Kuzri's way of doing it.
They would do that. Yeah, God wants you to be happy, be happy.
Yeah, but then you're not happy. You see, then we get into the Euthypro problem.
This whole
You're not really. What does it mean to be happy because God? What does that even mean to be happy? Because happiness is the one thing that you can't be because someone told you to be. I mean, it doesn't really make sense. The Kuzri does try to do this way. You see, the Kuzri is also very much on the Chassidic side of being happy. Which is why the Kuzri people are slightly more happy than the Rambam people. And the Kuzri uses God's will in this way. Because the Kuzri puts the philosophers together with the Christians in saying that you have to overcome the body and overcome the world. And he says, well, no, we have to access God. And you access God by the way that God wants you to access Him. And this is the famous quote of the Kuzri that She'en Simchascha b'mei simcha, she'en yirascha b'kniascha b'mei tanis kreva el Hashem, yosem simchascha b'mei simcha. Why would, and most Litvaks think that's true, right? That's why they say Tehillim on Purim. And they learn to make Seder Limud, because they believe that you're closer to God when you learn than when you're drunk. And the Kuzri's position, this is not the Rambam's position, because it doesn't have a definition of being good still. But the Kuzri says, and this is not in my sheet, but the Kuzri says that this is wrong because you keep telling God what to like. See, that's where what God's will leads. It's not clear if the Kuzri is entirely a God's will person, but he at least uses this rhetoric. In God's will language, you say, well, being close to God is, I'll say in the nicest way I can say the Kuzri, is accessing the ways that God wants to be accessed through. And those ways don't conform to your imagination, to your ideas of what God should do. He doesn't listen to you, or to any philosopher, or to any human mind. He just does what he wants. And he has revealed to us some systems that work, and one of his systems is to get drunk on Purim, and to write poetry, and to dance. He literally talks about dancing and singing, and that's a way of accessing God. And then there's another way, like sometimes we fast on Yom Kippur, and we're sad and sort of depressed, and whatever, more of the kniyah, like submit to God, and that's another way. And submitting to God, you see, but this is very important. Submitting to God is also only good because God likes it. There's no point in submitting to God. Submission is one thing, and like talking back is another thing, and like just being happy is a third thing. And it's like our Torah is mostly this is the Kuzri going against the asceticism in Christianity explicitly. He's much more explicitly against that. Whereas like there's no reason to be a monk. Like it's good once a year, basically. That's his position. Like Yom Kippur is
God senses man's absurdity in like a very serious way. Like what God senses, like what's.
I don't think it's absurd. He thinks that's why I don't think it's absurd. I think there's a system behind it, but it's not a humanly divinable system. Like you need revelation to know the system. I don't think it's absurd. It makes sense. Yeah, I don't think it's absurd. The Kuzri is against God being absurd. It's not absurd.
Well, I thought you were absurd, but
no, you just think we're exaggerating our ability to know the truth. You philosophers, this is him, like Al-Razali's big thing. Like you philosophers are exaggerating how much truth you actually know, and it's a very good point. I mean, you don't have to go all the way to the absurd for that. It's like saying, well, you're too much stuck in your framework and your system. It's possible that getting drunk on Purim is just as much of a way of getting close to God as, and like he would think that has to be proven. Like I could show you that. Like he prophesies that way. But there has to be a thing to show it, and it's not because God is crazy. It's because God is smarter than you, something more. Whatever, we get into the theology of that, but it's not trying to be absurd. It's explicitly not trying to be absurd. It's explicitly trying to say that we're absurd.
Right, that's what I said. God senses man's.
We're not absurd. We're just like overestimating our ability to discern the truth just by thinking. But anyways, that's why there's a Rutz Hashem theory, which makes you even more happy in the Rambam. By the Rambam, you can't go that far. In the Rambam, you would have to say that being happy, it's in a certain sense even more than that, because the Rambam would be So the Kizri has, like explicitly says that Yira and Simcha and Kniya, whatever the 2 or 3 things that he has over there, are just as valuable, and the correct measure for when to be happy and when to be sad is unknowable to human minds. You've got to follow the calendar. It turns out that his opinion of Judaism is that it falls out more on the side of love and happiness than on the side of
submission and
submission and the self-denial.
Fear and trembling.
Yeah, that's what he thinks, and this is in comparison to, like, we're the more happy religion. We used to be until the Litvak came along. In the ancient world and in the classic European world, the Jews were known as the more happy religion.
Versus the Christians or Muslims?
Versus everyone, yeah, both of those people. Like the drinking wine thing is a prime example. I mean, we're more happy than the Mormons, at least they don't drink any wine. There's...
we don't dance as much as we used to.
Yeah, we don't even know how to dance anymore. We don't even know the songs.
Now.
That's part of the Baya. It's, of course. And also the Holocaust made us sad and whatever. But yeah, classically the Jews are more happy. But that's the Kizri's opinion just because that's what our God likes. There was Plutarch in one of his like crazy reports about the Jews says like he thinks the Jews worship Dionysus because all their holidays are about drinking and waving palm trees. Which was basically the Dionysian festival in Greece, which was the time where you acted crazy. There was a guy that revived it last week. I should send you the clip. Okay, that's worse than Purim. Anyways,
did the festival of Dionysius?
Yeah, apparently it's in time of Purim. Yeah, that's the Roman name for it. Just what did I say? Yeah, but Bekitz says that's it. The Rambam would say something even more. That I see, according to the Rambam, the Torah is entirely on the side of Simcha. You see, he's even more happy than the Kizri in somewhat, because Simcha means perfection. And this is a philosophical truth. It's not just because God likes it that way, right? So therefore, the Rambam doesn't believe in the mitzvah of Yira almost. Like Yira, the Rambam was the one that invented Yira Saramis, right? Remember, another thing that everyone thinks is a Chiddush thing that the Rambam invented. The Rambam invented fear of God, not being afraid, not meaning to be afraid of God. He's the one that came up with this Chiddush. And even in Mishnah and Sefer HaMitzvahs, he famously does say Yiras Einish, but and doesn't really believe that. I mean, he believes that that's true for normal people, but he really doesn't think that that's what the mitzvah means. The mitzvah is just another, like the other side of a hava, which means whatever the language of Perikopes and Yisod Torah says. What's known in later language as Yiras Emes. So there are 2 ways of knowing God. Basically, we could say 2 human reactions to knowing God. But both of them are about knowing God. None of them are about being afraid of God.
And for a guy in the
you could say awe or whatever.
Are you in Simcha while you're having Yira?
Yeah, of course it's a Simcha thing. I mean, it's a drawing back kind of thing, the way he describes it. But it's definitely an ecstatic thing. It's like definitely a ha-up thing. It's not a kniya. It's not kniya. It's not. He doesn't say like Shlomo Melech says, like God is in heaven and you're on the earth. Calm down. It doesn't say that. It's that, but in a very subtle sense, like an extremely abstract sense, where just God is greater than me.
What the Kuzri is talking you the Rachamatim type of stuff?
No, but I don't know what the Kuzri Zira is exactly. But he would accept. And what I'm saying is that the Rambam's view turns to be much more in love. The Kuzri is also about love, I'm not saying. But the Rambam turns out to be more definitively that way, because his definition for Avodah Hashem is being Simcha. And that's not the Kid's definition. The Kid's definition for Avodah Hashem goes beyond that. It's like doing what God wants us to do. Or access. I don't like that language. Accessing God in the way that He wants to be accessed. Which is the Hinyan Lowy or whatever. But the Rambam's version is knowing God in the only way that you could know God, which is Simcha. Or the same thing as Simcha. It's already a transformed Simcha. It doesn't necessarily mean jumping and dancing. But it's closer to jumping and dancing than to laying on the floor. So that's the. Okay, I have to say one more important thing, and then we could finish. One more important thing that's very important, because some other thing is the first thing that says here, and in my paper, that's why I wrote it first, but it's very important, which is the Rambam is very interesting, and this is also a place where the Rambam is centering Simcha, and I don't think it's in his sources that way, which is in Ilchas Deres, and the Rambam says in his list of the Derech Emtzos, of the middle way things, he very interestingly decides that Simcha is the middle way. Okay? And this is just because everything has to be the middle way, and for everything to be the middle way, there needs to be like a bad extreme and two bad extremes, and one precisely the middle correcting. And this is like a whole trick of how to do it for every midah. It's not to be quite creative to figure this out. And the Rambam, I think he's the one that figured this out. I don't know. I don't think it's in Aristotle, and I don't think it's in the sources that Rambam used. Maybe it is. It's not in Shmona Prakim, which is where he's closer to the philosophical sources. It doesn't talk about Simcha there. He does talk about it later when what I discussed. Not in the list of. I don't think in the list of.
Not on the list, but he talks about Yaakov having atzvus.
Yeah. It does talk about yes. It talks about that. Yeah, so maybe it is, but I don't know. I have to look. Point is, the Rambam very interestingly decided that Simcha is a middle way between something he calls atzvus and hoilelus. And he very nice. This is something that Rabbi Blitzstein points out beautifully. He very nicely puts us into a Gemara which says, "Enash chna shoyre lo mitoch atzvus, lo mitoch schoige v'kalas halosh, elo mitoch simcha." So the Rambam says, "Wow, this is Aristotle speaking. You got no. Don't be hoileless, like wild jump. I don't know schoik. Don't be sad. Just be b'simcha." So simcha turns out to be the exact middle thing. And of course, this means that in some way, like you have to figure out the definition for the middle way, because all the middle ways are not like just finding two extremes. But it's something like the middle way is simcha. It's not seriousness. Like there's a reason why it's like in a not correct way to say it, that the middle way turns out to be the right side of this, not the left side.
The center is not always neutral.
Yeah, the center is not the middle. The center is the correct way, right? That's where the center.
This makes it seem like simcha is not exactly corollary of happiness, though.
Nah.
I would want to be maximally happy.
Right? No, it is. It is. You see, it is. That's what I'm saying. It is because
the curve looks like
because maximally happy is not otzef and not hilo. I don't know what you mean by maximally happy, but that's how all these things work. Just like maximally courageous doesn't mean what do we talk about? Doesn't mean reckless, right? Reckless is not more courage. It's just something that seems to be more, but it's less courage actually, right? And the same way, more you have to be the most besimcha. Right, this is why this whole middle thing is more complicated than it seems.
So I'll say it like this: I would want to be on the maximal side to the opposite of sadness or eitzah.
That is, but that is true. That is true. The Rambam does say it's different. I think that this is very weird. And there's later famously says that kas and this. Yeah, in other words, the truth is what he would say is that choig v'kalas rosh seems to somehow, I don't have a clear way of saying this right now, but what I think is that it seems to be extreme, the extreme of simcha, but it's actually the opposite of it. Like all these things, you're just making a mistake. Like there's all these things like recklessness and courage, which is where I thought about it the most. Recklessness looks similar to courage to people, but it's totally a different thing. It seems like the most courageous person would be reckless, and it also seems like the most prudent person would just be passive, but those things are not true. So that's why we put this into this like scheme of the middle. It's just a nice way of thinking about it. I'm not even sure if it has any reality behind it. Like maybe in like your soul, there's like these tendencies that somehow when they go to the extreme, I don't even know if that's true. I'm not sure about that. In some way, it's just like making a nice. Aristotle loves this, doing this, and then it's always like this, like trying to be the normal guy. And like your people are crazy, I'm normal. But it's not really like finding the middle turn, middle place. There's a lot more to think about this, but it is maximally happy. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's just the correct definition of happiness. In other words, it can exclude ecstasy and include. This is where I'm disagreeing with this Rabbi Blitzstein, because he seems to think that maybe this is not. I think it does. Just
it includes ecstasy, or you think ecstasy?
It does, and then includes it. Yeah, it's not. He's not talking about that here. That's a different thing. That's more like in Simchas Yom Tov, where in Sukkot, so he talks about. But Does
ecstasy even fall under this line that?
Maybe it's a totally different thing. It's possible that it's a totally different thing. I don't know, but I'm saying just to answer his question. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm focusing. That his thing is you should be samech. You should be mitzvah gedolih v'simcha tov. There's the Rambam's chiddush, not the Nachman. He's the first one to say. By the way, it's also a chiddush. The Gemara doesn't say you should always be b'simcha. Like Rabbi Yonis says, like you should be b'simcha in order to daven. Maybe v'chein l'chalayim toy, v'chein l'chavaisvos, there's a whole list of things in the Gemara, but it doesn't say v'chein v'chalayim. The Rambam is the one that turns this into v'chalayim. All day, every day, you should be happy. I even said, and I found someone said this, that's why the Rambam doesn't like this nichnas adam abim b'simcha, because like, why only other, all year? But
is that possible for the Rambam?
Yeah.
For perfected men, though, or would you be maximally misamech all year round?
Yeah, it's possible. Of course, the reality is that people are doing it more in Ada, but that's that's not a halacha like that. It's just like Musar. That's just kind of.
Rambam's idea of Simcha ends up coming closer to something like enthusiasm, I guess.
No, what I talked until now was perfection or blessedness. But now
this perfection means.
Wait, right now I'm
activities, right?
Yeah, but it's the end of them, the pleasure that you get in them in the end.
Okay.
Right now, I'm trying to go back. I'm trying to turn to something which is not exactly that. The goal of Simcha. It's connected more to the end being Simcha, to the beginning of being Simcha, or in the Rambam's language, connected more to social or political perfection. And the Rambam sees Simcha as a political perfection also.
According to this understanding of Simcha on the core, how could you ever have Mishnechnas Ab Namad in the Simcha?
Yeah, it doesn't mean that. It means the Rambam, that's why the Rambam mistranslates the whole Tanis of Av as meaning doing tshuva and not being sad. He totally ignores the whole Avelis thing.
Well, he would say
more or less tries to undeny it.
Because it's like a morning.
The Rambam really didn't know what to do with sadness, so to the extent they didn't know where to put Hilchas Uval. He stuck it into Sefer Shoftim. For no reason. Like he said, well, Merhuga Bezdin dies, so you might as well put it there. Like, basically, you only die when Bezdin kills you. Like there's something everywhere. And even in Hilchas he says, oh, why we do Avelis? So you should do tshuva. It's always the same thing.
But maybe Av is more of lamenting the fact that you don't get true happiness because we don't have something.
Yeah, of course. The Rambam would say that we're remembering that we're in Galus, which is because we sinned, which is because we're not happy, which is we can't because we're in a that's what it says in Chalak Beis, because we're under these like the Rambam said that's why was no nevuah.
Much cooler than tefillin.
What?
So I think we start getting.
No, because we live in a bad polity. Because we have.
The degree I'm being mamait to Simcha.
Bad kings.
Mamait in my engagement in Simcha. That's not good.
No, it's noticing that you're not besimcha. Noticing that you actually live in gulas to the extent that you do, and trying to do something about it. That's how the Rambam interprets the whole Tanis of Chodesh Av. All the Dal Tanis says it's basically noticing that we're still in the same brach that we're forever, and this is why we don't have prophecy because you're not happy. And because we live in bad societies, basically, and we should try to make our society better. That's his understanding of Tanis. Okay, yeah. How did I get to this? But there's also a political perfection, which is Simcha. And this is the Simcha. Like when the Rama made Simcha, and the Simcha mitzvah gdel is besimcha tamet, should always be besimcha. And like all midas tovas, the Rambam thinks that this is mostly it's something internal to the person, but the point of it is mostly for others. Very interesting. Right, so famously the Rambam has two perfections. We just talked about the second one, which is where everything goes for. But the first perfection is social political perfection, right? Or sometimes we call it tikkun haguf, right? Which is the condition, or precondition, which is also the Rambam's on other pshat where he says that we need that simcha in order to get the other simcha. So you have how everything is connected. But the first perfection is just having good life in the most literal sense. And according to Aryel and the Rambam, which is why the Rambam very nicely matches with Aristotle better than the Platonist readings, where he says the Torah promises a good life, literally, and that is true because, like Aristotle said, part of being good is having money, because you can't be generous without money, and you can't learn without money. So those things are actually good, but before, and even though they're not the final good, but they're actually part of a good life. Unlike like the frum Stoics, some people which would say, Chaz v'sholem, it doesn't matter at all if you have money. It doesn't matter. And in this sense, the Rambam is much closer to traditional, old-fashioned biblical Judaism than most other people, because he totally accepts the goodness of having political independence and having a lot of money and a lot of children and whatever, all those things. And for that,
a lot of money and a lot of children.
how's it going? The mizmir from Motzei Shabbos? Zarechem v'kaspechem ya'bekacha. Zareinu v'kaspechem, yeah. Children and money are like the stars. So, what was I saying? And then now it's interesting that the Rambam thinks of Simcha as and he took it from Aristotle. This is one of the things that he explicitly says that he took from Aristotle, and Chelek Gimel Perek Mem Gimel, where he talks about Simchas Yom Tov. He says that the reason we have holidays, just like everything else, is for two reasons. The second one is to think about God. Simchas B'Sheva is mostly probably about that. But the first one is it's a social glue. People that never meet each other hate each other, and one of the best places to meet is like at a festival. So this is why we have festivals, and this is why all human societies ever have festivals. It's basically part of being civilization. And there's another reason why modern world is not a civilization because they don't have any festivals. And if they have, it's like Shirayim from Christianity or whatever. You know that the Puritans, the real Protestants were against Christmas also, you know, they're like only for Easter, like only fasting, only Lent and Easter, whatever. The kid said, you don't know about this. This is true. You know that Martin Luther hated Purim? Literally. He literally wanted to take the book of Esther out of the Bible. He said this is Jewish, crazy book.
Why?
The least Christian book in the Bible is Esther. I don't know, he didn't like it. He took it out. I think he almost either entirely took it out or like wanted to take it out of the canon.
It's not the Catholic canon, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Catholic canon is the biggest, has tons of stuff.
I know, I thought that there's a few books.
Yeah, there's a longer Megillah Esther also. But more from one. Yeah, more from Megillah Esther. In any case, Luther was against this and he was against everything that makes humans happy. Stop. In any case, the modern world doesn't really have festivals besides for like Burning Man.
The French
which is a good thing.
tried to make a religion like festival of reason, right?
Yeah, they tried. Did it
You
work?
don't mean holiday by festival.
Yeah.
Like we have holidays, like 4th of
Where the
July.
bank is closed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 4th of
Thanksgiving.
July, like nobody really celebrates it. Like
They
the
have
stores are
barbecue.
open. Somewhat. They tried.
Yeah,
Yeah, to
Halloween,
the
right?
extent.
Halloween is Shirayim, that's the Shirayim.
Halloween is
It's also
Chatzi
negative
pagan,
activity of
Chatzi
closing the stores
capitalist.
instead of going somewhere else. You know?
Yeah, I'm not saying they don't have. They have very schwach. Honestly, very schwach. Like one of the things that the more traditional you are, you have more of it is l'chaims. Like the days where you don't say tachin, like Aryel the Yitzchok laugh at the chassidim that they have too many yom tovim. But it's a very classic like modern versus pre-modern thing. Where like you know that the one of the reforms that the Second Vatican Council did was cut down the amount of holidays. Like what was it called? Saints Days and whatever. There's tons of them, and the more like what?
Go back to Megillah's Tainus time.
Yeah, this is modern first problem. But Megillah's Tainus. No, this is because the Chav B'Sefik whatever. Yeah, Arva Kol Simcha. Of course. Like someone calculated that in medieval England, people worked for like 70 days a year or something. But in any case, no, but in really ancient times, there was like one festival a year, mostly. That's what the Rambam quotes Aristotle saying that the harvest was the great festival in all ancient societies. And the Rambam says, yeah, thank you very much. That's why we have Sukkot, and that's why Sukkot is the biggest holiday. Most like universalizing Shtikl Rambam. And it's only one place in Tamei Mitzvot where he quotes like a historical thing from Aristotle. Like besides for his whole Avodah Zarah, what's his name, Sabian things. Yeah.
This is by the things.
Yeah.
This is by Nida also and Talmud Torah.
Yeah, he's against them. And this is saying that we're like them.
But he's saying we're reacting.
Yeah. There's a lot of reaction, but this is actually the one that he's not reacting. He's saying we're just following their tradition.
That's actually good.
There's also some other places where he says that we're vatet the tradition. This is like the tradition is good, and we're following the human tradition since the times of forever. There's human festivals for harvest, and they're good and why are they good? Firstly, for social reasons. So Simcha for this. Now, for this purpose. Simcha doesn't mean being happy. It has a broader meaning of being happy because it means like Simchas Yom Tov. It means getting together to be happy, like having a party. This is also where the Rambam is much more literal. Like he wouldn't agree with people that would say that the real Simchas Purim is the Sinemas Medrash, because that's very bad for polity. You don't get cities out of people in Medrash. I mean, if everyone would be that would be like Olam Haba. But since we live in Olam Hazeh, what?
Isn't that what this city does?
Which city?
Lakewood.
Yeah, Lakewood is a ir she'reshetam dechumim. They're not allowed to live in it. It says in the Gemara, the Bakiva, Tzivil Lebanav.
What?
The Bakiva told his children, do not live in Lakewood. It's a Meferish Gemara.
And the reasons are obvious also.
And he says the same way, yeah. It's not like Arta and stuff. It says in Rashi. Al Tudr be'ir she'reshetam dechumim. And Rashi says because they're busy learning, they don't make a arif. Or they don't make sure there's a doctor or whatever. Regular things like that.
That's just literally what this is.
Okay, the kid said no, but in any case, the Rabbi wouldn't say this because he thinks that the point of the Yom Tov is to get together with people and very much understands the reality and to be happy. And being happy, this is Aristotle's big thing, where friendship is the basic of all interpersonal ethics. And the most important thing is to be happy. And now you understand, what the Rambam says in the end of Lech's Megillah. Everyone thinks the Rambam is being a Musarnik. Don't make a big party, make your friends a big party. It means by the way, this is what Mishlech Manas means and people don't realize. Mishlech Manas doesn't mean send people gifts. You know what a mana is, right?
Portion of food.
A portion, yeah. Like Chana. L'chana yit and mana achas apayim. Right? It means invite them to your party. Okay? You don't need, I'm pretty sure that I'm not pretty sure it's in Fershik Gemara. You don't have to send it at all. This is some weird achrayim that make up these weird halachas like from the ear. Like you gotta send it, it is shliach, nonsense. You need to invite people to your party. If they can't come, send them a piece tickle fish. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You bring a big party, it's a big party, and yeah. And I also think that your Yitzchok Matunas Levenim also. It's also in Fershik Gemara. They're not two separate things. It's the same mitzvah. You don't have to do Matunas Levenim and Mishlech Manas. Of course, if you're doing Mishlech Manas with your kids' things, then you're not Yitzchok B'chlal, so you have to do Matunas Levenim and Kila Avile. It's also a mitzvah with the kids. It's like a stammer. So that's not. No, by the way, the Matunas Levenim was also from the times from forever. Magus Purim, but that was mostly to get the people, the poor people, to make parties also. Now, when the Rambam says that the Simcha is not to be happy, it's to include people. It's literally because through being happy, right? Because he believes that the point of holidays was to act as social glue, and social glue doesn't work. I mean, it works to some extent if you want to have like an exclusive party where only the high class people are invited. But since the Rambam read Sefer Devarim, and Sefer Devarim says "V'samachta b'chagecha," by the way, that's the reason it says that pasuk. It doesn't say you should be happy. It says "Atuvincha v'avdecha v'alevi v'ager v'yisem v'almana." Like there's long list, right? And the Rambam says the point is that because that's literally what it is for. We're supposed to have a good civilization, not a bad one, and the one where we care for everyone equally. And that is what holidays are for. And that's why if you think that you're having Simcha, that's what Simcha's Kreised, the people have this very weird Platonist reading of the Rambam. Like the Rambam in Chos Yom Tov says that if you close your door, it says if you close your door for Yom Tov, which is what, well, I'm not going to, Hakam or Yid. If you close your door for Yom Tov, then you not have Simcha's Yom Tov, you have Simcha's Kreised. By which it doesn't mean that you should have spiritual Simcha. There's another thing. Spiritual Simcha says in Hilchos Lulav. That's on a different level. That's Simcha's B'Sheva, that's only for Chachamim. The other people, the normal people should stand on the side and enjoy it. And do this so. That's why the Rambam says only for Chachamim, because it's a different level of Simcha. But the first level of Simcha is to invite people to your party. It doesn't say give a Moshe Shmus to everyone. You don't need to have Simcha Kreisai, you have Simcha Rachne, Simcha Shal Mitzvah, Simcha Sheyesh B'Avodah Yetzer HaKol. And the Avodah Yetzer HaKol is like it says in the Nevi'chas Purim. L'lach b'drachav. L'lach b'drachav meaning run the world like God runs the world. How does God run the world? By having societies that have holidays. So do that. Don't run away from it. That's how the world works.
The Ram that Purim also was a holiday of fraternity. It's not just the Shalosh Regalim.
Yeah, of course. That's the Ram. It's Mishlech Manas. The Rambam has a pasuk for this. He didn't make it up. And there's a reason why it's supposed to come not enough. A whole star history of theory that not for now. But the point is, Mishlech Manas is literally. I mean, if you read, and Mishlech Manas is not only for Purim. The Rambam actually says they should Mishlech Manas on every Yom Tov.
Where?
On Hilchos Yom Tov. It's the Rambam Hilchos Yom Tov. And this shtickle, I think, it says the word, and it's in the Tanakh. It says in the Mishnah and Baitza. It's a Mishnah and Baitza that you have to have Mishlech Manas on every Yom Tov. I want to make. It says a pasuk in Ezra and Nehemiah. It's a pasuk in Ezra on 1 second. You really want to know? You didn't know?
Yeah,
it's a pasuk in.
I don't know most things.
It's a pasuk in Nehemiah that you have to send Mishlech Manas on Rosh Hashanah. But it's also a Meferesha Gemara and Meferesha Mishnah. I don't see that says the word Mishlech Manas, but it's the Mefarshim quote the Mishnah. It's a Mishnah and Baitza that says. I wrote it in my other notes. They should send monas that the Besham is mechalik Besham Basil. No, come here. Mezachtas Baitza. I can't do this like this. Mezachtas Baitza. It says like this. I'll read you a Mishnah. That it says Mishlech Monas. Yeah, that I know. Yeah, that I know, but it doesn't say they have to say Mishlech Monas. It says in the Mishnah. Ja, so steht da Mishnah. Kemes, so steht da Mishnah. Besham Oimrim, Betza Perek Aleph Mishnah Tes. Besham Oimrim, Beshalchin Beyam Tov Ele Monos. Mishnah, Beshal Oimrim. If you could send things that are not ready to eat immediately, because monas means things that are ready to eat immediately. But it's a very Mishnah that is mishal shlech monas b'yom tov, and the Gemara explains that the reason is because Simchas Yom Tov, the Mishnah, and that's where the Rambam is calling from, where he says that the ikamet. And then, and weirdly, he connects the thing of hoiles and sichlis also in the same shtickle in Simchas Yom Tov. I'm not sure how that connects entirely. There's two halachas. No, it's not the same thing. And here it says they have to, simcha is a kulin. If your simcha is disconnect from others, then it's kulin, it's not simcha.
So, are you contending this is the Rambam mentions this when he says you should be ma'akil geri someone amana on Yom Tov?
Yeah, of course. He's thinking of the Mishnah that says after San Mishlech Manas on Yom Tov.
So it's not just that
and the
there's
pasuk.
a general Indian, but there's not the real surah mitzvah of Mishloach Manas, and Mishloach Manas important actually just brings down dinim. You know, it has to be two people.
Yeah, all of these things are made up, mostly.
Made up by the Ram, because I'll bring it up.
Only somewhat. It's whatever. I'm not going to do a whole shir of Mishlech Manas. Mishlech Manas means making big Purim parties and inviting your friends. It's literally, by the way, this was understood by everyone. I'm not saying you're not yoitz like these. When you have to make halacha, then things get weird. But like the Bichil of Paris, who decided that there's a mitzvah to make simcha also on Yom Adar, okay? The language there says that vaya mazmin kruim. Like how was he mekayim simchas Yom Tov? He made a party and invited his friends. Otherwise, that's what simchas Yom Tov is. All Yom Tov and Purim also. And Purim is in the weekday, so I should be able to give money also because some people need money. That's the whole thing. That's why they. But and this is very important. This thing of giving, of including everyone in the simcha is very important for the Rambam, and it's also a Mishnah in Ovis, and this is also part of what the Rambam did in Ilchos Dayis. In Ilchos Dayis it said you should not be samech lo yimhoil v'soich v'lo etzev v'oinen ela samech kol yom of benachas b'seva panim yafes. And in Perek Beis he elaborates on that a little more. He says he shouldn't be a letz v'letzivish le'adam put it b'schoik. Okay, okay, don't walk around like whatever. So very weirdly, or not weirdly, it makes a lot of sense now. He like had this like simcha in between atzvus and hoiles, and simcha means being makabel kol adam b'seva panim yafes. Now this is of course a mishnah in Perek Avos. There's two mishnahs in Perek Avos, right? In Perek Aleph, Rabbi Gamliel or someone said have makabel kol adam b'seva panim yafes, and that means like nicely. The Rambam translates trotzim v'neemes. And then in Perek Gimel, Rabbi Shmuel, I think, says, "Havekal leroish v'noach letishchayres, ve'havim bekabel kol adam b'simcha." And this is the Rambam's, and it's on my second page on this thing. This is the Rambam's explanation of this Mishnah. The Rabbi Shmuel said you shouldn't act the same to serious people as to young people, as to non-important people. Like leroish, havekal leroish for adam godel, you should be kal, you should make yourself small, you should be mishamashim, you should take him seriously. For shachar, for someone who has black hair, you should be noyach, you shouldn't be evil, you shouldn't be like, how do you say, angry. But you should be noyach, you shouldn't be kal, you shouldn't like do everything he asks. It shouldn't be easy to him, you should be nice to him. To important people, you should be easy. That's what kal means. And letishchayres, you should be, you should have some self-respect. Like don't treat everyone the same, entirely the same. And then the Rambam goes on, and then you would think that I told you that you shouldn't treat everyone the same. So now you're going to start becoming like some kind of elitist. No, don't do that. And he said this is more Shammai. This is more than Shammai said in the first Perek B'Sefer Panim Yafes.
Over there with min adam.
Yeah, it's very clear because he's being medayik. Because it says Bekabel Kol Adam B'Simcha. Doesn't say Kol Yehudi, doesn't say Kol Talmud Chacham, doesn't say Kol whatever. Doesn't say Merosha Kilas Yana. It doesn't say exactly. He's saying every human being, no matter if he's a slave or a free person. Yeah, it doesn't say that. It says everyone. And he's saying that Simcha is even more. It's interesting that he does. I don't know. I'm not sure. So I saw the Lechem Mishnah says like, okay, so why? If the Rambam understands that Simcha is different than Sefer Panim Yafes, it's like even more, then why didn't he pass in the Efem Mekabel Kolam Simcha says only Efem Mekabel Kolam Sefer Panim Yafes? But I don't think that's the pshat right now. I think that what's going on is that the Rambam says that because he did give a limit, like Shammai just said, amazingly, the same Shammai that everyone thought was a bad guy, right? Said you should be Mekabel Kolam Sefer Panim Yafes. See, but Shammai was also like, no, doesn't mean he should be stupid, right? But he was Mekabel Kolam Sefer Panim Yafes. But then Rabbi Shmuel said, I think it was Rabbi Shmuel if I remember correctly, said, don't treat everyone as entirely equally. So you would have thought that gives you license to give Mishlech Manas only to your friends. So you have to like go to the other extreme and say if I have Mekabel Kolam B'Simcha. But it's very clear from the Chasdais that the Rambam identifies Sefer Panim Yafes B'Simcha in the reality. Because being part of being B'Simcha, or being B'Simcha means being B'Simcha to everyone. So Simcha is not something that happens between you and Melad Atzma. Happens between you and your friends. That's why Simchas Yom Tov is also something that happens between you and your friends. Otherwise, it's not Simchas Yom Tov; it's something else. It's just being a glutton. Simchas Kreise. So that's the Rambam thinks of this as the mostly what Purim is for. At least of this first. This Purim also has a second step, but the first step on the mitzvah basically of Purim is mostly about this, and the mitzvah of Chanukah is about this, and this is the end of the Rambam Menachas Chanukah. Shekol Terel Killanit Delas Shalom Ba'olam, and Shalom Bayis of Shabbos is basically the same thing as Simcha, because how do I know? It's a pasuk. Pasuk in Zechariah, that the Rambam likes very much. Hashem, I don't need you to fast. And Rambam says, yeah, because God doesn't care about fasting or eating. Do I, whatever, are you doing anything to me if I fast? And you eat, you fast, I don't care. What do I care about? As far as I'm concerned, whatever, says the Rambam, emes malas sechlias, shalem malas amidas, which all mean shalom or all mean simcha. So being l'sasam v'simcha means, instead of being, like the Yeshaya Novi said, right? Instead of going to Shul Yom Kippur and saying viday, go to your friend who doesn't have food and give him a shlechmanas. So this is how, when Mordechai Tzaddik realized that Purim is a better way of doing things than Yom Kippur, he said, instead of fasting, like Esther thought, you should give him a shlechmanas. And that's why it says a pasuk, v'kasha kibli al nafsham v'al divrei atzayim v'zakosim, which means Yom Kippur, as far as I'm concerned. Means this thing that the Nevi'im, all the Nevi'im of the beginning of Eshani were against this. Like, you people were so from, whenever we told you to fast, you fasted. Listen, no use in fasting. It's a better idea to make a big party and to invite all the poor people like Achashverosh, Mekutim Vadgada, everyone. And that's what you should rather do. And then some Chochem decide, oh, so we should fast Erev Purim. Don't ask me why. Okay.
Why is it better to do one or the other?
Because fasting doesn't cause poor people to have food.
Yeshai also comments on fasting.
That's what Yeshai Novi said.
It says it just means all the other times you go and you give people your money. Is that?
Yeah, but that's true though.